Welcome back to the Beyond the Bestseller podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Schuknecht, and today's guest is Philippa Gamse, author of Website Wealth, a business leader's guide to driving real value from your analytics. Philippa, I have to admit that I'm a bit of a nerd because this subtitle got me very excited to learn what you have to say. So I would love for you to just introduce yourself a little bit and why you wrote this book.
Great, thank you. Yes, I mean, I've been playing with web analytics for a long time because I think it's really interesting, partly because it's such a great mix of being a kind of nerdy data person and also a lot of creativity. Because, sometimes you find something and you're like, okay, what are we going to do about that? If there's an opportunity to do something different, and if so, what could that be? And so I kind of find that very, very interesting. But the reason that I wrote the book is because I know that when you start talking about analytics, a lot of people just glaze over. And a lot of business owners don't want to deal with it because it's not really what floats their boat. And so they sort of default to some metrics that make them feel good, like, more visitors this week than last week, or their agency tells them that they have more visitors this week than last week. But they don't go further, like, were they the right kind of visitor? Did they actually convert? Did they actually do what we wanted them to do? And so what I was trying to do was to make analytics accessible and really explain the benefits of using analytics in very English business-oriented terms. So the book is not full of terminology. I mean, no business owner actually needs to know what a custom dimension is, right? Lots and lots of stories and examples of places where we've created new opportunities or new products, new services found, maybe new target markets based on what we saw in the analytics. And the whole point being that without the insights that you gain from the numbers, and also things like screen session recordings and so on, you couldn't possibly know what you're finding just by looking at the website.
So, okay, so lots of questions for you. Who is this book for then? It sounded to me like from what you said, this is for like the business owner, maybe some marketing folks. Tell me a little bit more about like who did you write this specifically to help?
Yeah, so it's written exactly that for the business owner or marketing people who are not the analytics people, who are not
Yeah.
versed in all this stuff. So that they can talk to their analyst more intelligently, if you like. I mean, one of the things that I'm trying to help people understand is what analytics can tell you and what it can't. Because sometimes as analysts, we get some very unrealistic questions like, why don't all my numbers coming out of Google Analytics for e-commerce, right, exactly reflect what's in my CRM? And the answer is it won't, it's not going to. So please don't make me spend hours trying to make it because, we'll all be wasting our time. But it's also, so it's interesting because like quite a number of practitioners have read it. So it's not for people who really understand analytics, except that quite a few of them have read it and they've given me some very, very nice comments. Because my goal is for the practitioners, to be able to give it to their clients, to their managers, whatever, to help the people who hire them and who supervise them, or however that works, to understand better what they do, what they can offer, what their power can be if you really let them fly. And they've all said, very complimentary things about using it from that perspective.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I understand analytics, but like, I'm not a data analyst kind of personality. I just like, I get obsessed when you mention that business owners don't care about they don't understand analytics or whatever. It's not what floats their boat. But like, to me, I'm like, I love looking at the numbers and like figuring out like what's working, what's not working, So to me, like anyone who is running a business should care about those numbers because it gives you insight into what you can influence. Like if something's working, then you know that you can do more of that. Or, like when it comes to your website, for example, I had a blog post that I wrote like years ago that just all of a sudden was like getting tons of traffic, and I learned that I had hit the number one spot in the search results. So when people were searching for a certain term, like that was the first thing they were seeing. And then that was really fun to see. So then you're like, how can I do this again? Right? Like, or how can I stay on the top? Because if somebody else comes in with content, on the similar topic, they might now knock me down, which did happen eventually. But
Right.
anyway, it's really fun to see that. And then if something's working to bring in traffic, then you're going to have more exposure, maybe more conversions. So to me, I love this stuff, but I know not everyone is that way. So when it
And
comes
can I
to
just say,
like,
I just want to be really clear when we're saying, business owners don't necessarily. I don't want to be rude to business owners. Of course they understand many things very well, and
no,
it's
no,
not. And I also want that part of the problem is certainly if you look at your average Google Analytics screen, it can be incredibly overwhelming if you're not used to seeing it. I'm not saying it's business owners being stupid. I'm saying that it's if it's not your primary
no.
understanding or your primary skill, it's extremely easy to get overwhelmed and extremely confused by what you're looking at.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I am only a recent business owner. So in the past, I was I call it the person behind the person. So I supported business owners, kind of found myself accidentally in marketing. And I think a big part of that was because I have this creative part of my brain and also this analytical part of my brain. And so I'm able to like just naturally look at numbers and go, oh, here's what we need to do. Right. And so I would work for business owners who, you're right, like they weren't necessarily what they wanted to be doing with their time was not looking at the website numbers and figuring out what they needed to do. They wanted
Right.
me in that role to do that for them and tell them what to do next, right? So this book is
Right.
kind of that like that support to that person to help them
Right. But
understand some
see,
things.
here's the
And like you
thing.
said,
You as the analyst can't do that unless you really understand what the business owner is trying to achieve with their website and with their business, because the website is supporting the
yeah,
business. And so one of the issues that I do find is that it is unfortunately true that for some business, sometimes you meet a business owner and you say, can you explain this? What's your strategy? What are your goals? And not just what's your big goal, which is to sell stuff, but what are all the things you're trying to do here? Like getting people to sign up for your newsletter or join your loyalty program or watch
yeah,
a specific video or whatever. And they can't always articulate that very well. So that's important too. The business owner has some responsibility here. And it's also,
yeah.
the book is trying to explain what, as a business owner, you need to know in order to work effectively with your analyst so that together you can produce the best result.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's so leads me to the next question I kind of had in my brain there was like, what type of business is this book helping with? Like, because I think of like, there's just so many different things, right? Like, what's the type of business that would get the most out of this book and the content that you share?
Honestly, any business that has a website that plays some sort of role in the business. So, I mean, if you literally see your website as a placeholder and you have no interest in it whatsoever, okay. And there are some types of businesses. I mean, for example, people that do a lot of government business, for example, this is not how they sell. The website is not there to sell stuff because that's not how it works. If your website is really not an important, doesn't play an important role, then okay. But for anybody else, where you want people to come to the site, you want them to do things, whatever that might be, and that could be support. It could be post-sales support that you're using your site for. It's not just sales. Then this book is for you.
Okay. Okay. Um, and Philippa, tell me a little bit about your background. Like, what led you to write this book? Like, how did you gain your expertise in analytics and the website kind of work?
Well, I mean, I hate to say it, but I've been around for a while, and so I was working honestly in the reasonably early days of the web and of analytics, and it just got the bug. And as I said, this book is a lot of stories and examples, because I think that's how you explain it the best. And they're all from my experience. They're all real life. This is not AI generated, right? This is all out of things that I've actually done, and conversations that I've had, and people that I've met. And it's kind of like a distillation of all of my experience and all of the things that I've learned along the way about how analytics and business strategy intersect. So and I honestly think it's a different approach, or it's a different type of book. There's a lot of stuff on the market, about how to use analytics, like how to use the interface, how to do custom this, that, and the other, and so on. But I don't think there's so much about really thinking about the business strategy behind the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, I noticed that you have a good number of reviews for your book on Amazon, and I was curious about kind of how you approached that. Did you proactively ask people to review your book, or did that happen naturally?
No, I did. I mean, I think you have to in this day and age. I think you have to. So both me and my publisher approach, and certainly to get, I'm very proud to say this has got some very nice endorsements from, I mean, if you know the industry, people like Avinash Kaushik and Jim Stern, who are very well known in the analytics world, have endorsed it. Dory Clark, who's on the executive education faculty at Columbia University, those are some of the, and all of the endorsements that I've, Jay Steinfeld, who was the founder of Blinds.com, which was one of the very first very successful e-commerce businesses that got bought out by Home Depot. So for the endorsements, I actually obviously went and asked. It's just and for reviews too. And sometimes people are very nice and they write to you on LinkedIn and they say, I just read your book and I like it. And you just say, if you liked it, thank you so much, and would you be willing to post a review? Because I think this day and age, you have to ask.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I love that you were proactive about that. I think that is hard for a lot of authors to do, because it's just hard to ask somebody to do that for you. But you're right, the asking is, people don't think about it. Like, they might read it and
Right.
they don't think about it, but if you ask, they're like, oh sure, yeah, I can do that, right?
Right.
So did you have like a goal for how many reviews you were trying to get, or were you just kind of like casting a wide net to whoever you could possibly get a review from?
I don't know. I mean, I've heard, I don't know how anecdotal this is, and I've heard that once you cross sort of 30 or so, when people come and look at the book on Amazon, they say, okay, this is for real. I mean, I don't know if you've looked at Amazon recently. I mean, so my book's called Website Wealth, and one of the things I did was to look up the title. I mean, titles aren't copyrighted, right? Anybody can call the book the same thing. But there were kind of like a couple of other books. One of them was only a Kindle book. It was only like 5 pages. It was complete rubbish. I mean, I don't know even why it was there. I think Amazon come along and take them down, these things down in the end, right?
Yeah.
But I have heard this number of 30 in order to achieve credibility, and obviously if they're all good reviews, that's better. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard 50 and I've heard 100. What I
Right.
usually tell new authors is, like, don't worry about like what that number, whatever that number is. The main thing is the more the better, right? Like, so just shoot
Right.
for something. And so I usually tell people, just like shoot for 50, because once you
Right.
hit a certain number, like, Amazon is going to push it out to more people. Um,
Right.
so yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's
And
an
my book's
approach that.
still, yeah, it's still reasonably new, so hopefully I'm still working on getting some more. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you just published it. Oh yeah, just a few months ago.
Hmm.
This episode won't come out for a while, so it will. As of right now, your book has only actually been on the market for a couple months. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
that's a
And
great number of reviews for the first.
hopefully even when it comes out, I mean, the book is hopefully kind of not exactly timeless, but I don't think that what it says is going to is going to be not true in the near future. The
Yeah,
only section that might
yeah,
change is there is a little section on AI and the role that AI plays in all of this, because we have to talk about AI now. And currently it does seem that AI is increasingly useful in doing basic analysis. So, and it's great at creating dashboards and charts and all the stuff I hate doing. It's like your intern. It's extremely good at being an intern. It's very good at pointing out, oh, today there was a peak in this, that, or the, the sort of basic stuff but I don't think it's yet really able to do the so what. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so what kind of strategies can we create from what we're seeing here?
Yeah. Um, so you mentioned a publisher. How did you approach the publishing process for your book?
So when I say publisher, it was a hybrid. Um,
Okay,
so
okay.
I don't know if that downgrades it, but
Not at all. I'm very supportive of going the I'm supportive of going any route, and in fact, I'm actually more anti traditional publishing because people really now can choose any path, right? But
right,
the reason I ask is I was wondering about, when it comes to self-publishing, the nice thing is that you mentioned like that section about AI might need to get updated, and you can update that anytime you want when you self-publish. So
right,
that's a nice thing about it. Um,
right.
what about with the hybrid publisher? Like if you make updates, is there extra cost to you for that, or like how does that part work? Do you know?
I got my publisher because my publisher is a guy called Vince Warnock, who has a wonderful podcast called Chasing the Insights. He's quite a well-known marketer down in Australia. And
Okay.
I was actually talking to him about being on his podcast. And as we were talking, he said, you've got some great stories and some great things to say. Have you thought about writing a book? And I said, no. And he said, well, I think you should. And I don't think he was honestly saying that because he wanted me to pay him. I think he was honestly saying that because he was honestly saying that, right? He said, I think this is an important book and an important message, and I think it should be out there. So it kind of grew from there. So hopefully we're still
Okay.
friends, and hopefully, I'm actually about to record, I think, the audio book version, because again, I've heard that
Nice.
having an audio book certainly increases the credibility. So I'm going to do that and hopefully launch that early next year, and which will
Okay.
allow us to do another whole launch. So I'm looking forward to continuing to work with him on that.
Yeah. So the audiobook, are you going to record it your own voice, or are you going to have somebody else record it?
No, I mean, firstly, the book is written in my voice. It's written in first person. I mean, it's written in, conversation, and it's conversational. So, I mean, it totally lends itself to being an audiobook. And I mean, I hate to say this, but given that I have a British accent, which certainly in the American market, a lot of people really like, I think I'm absolutely the right person to narrate my own book.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Um, and so you'll have that version like possibly early next year, which um, early next year will be early 2026, and your episode will be coming out probably in early
Oh,
2026.
good.
So we
There we go.
will,
Right.
so we will include the link to that if you have it, or and maybe you'll have an
Hmm.
update at that time. Um, yeah, it's great to have an audiobook version. How are you approaching the recording part of that? Do you have somebody that you're working with for that? Or are you going to do it yourself?
No, I have a wonderful
Or do you know yet?
coach. I have a wonderful
Okay.
coach called David H. Lawrence, who is a voiceover coach, who actually has a course for people who want to do their own audiobook. And he's an actor
Okay.
and a
Nice.
professional, and he's lovely. So I highly recommend him.
Nice. I haven't heard of him before, so I will definitely have to check that out. In my author community, we talk about this a lot, like about whether you should have an audiobook. I think it's great to have one, but it's a challenge for people to record their own. They uh, some people don't like the sound of their own voice, or they just don't want to
Right,
put the work in or whatever. So it's great that you're
right,
doing that yourself. I think it is helpful for people to hear your voice when you're recording, or when they're listening. It's the author. It's not nonfiction's not like fiction. It's better coming from you as the author. So that's great that you're adding that.
well, and especially
Um,
as I said, this book is essentially my stories. So, this is me.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. What about how does the book support like the work that you do in your business? How do you
So
use it as
I
a
don't
tool
know
for
about
that?
other authors. I have to say that I did write a book about 10 years ago that I'm very honored to say was endorsed by Guy Kawasaki, among others. And in that intervening time, I mean, I feel like things have really changed. And it honestly seems to be much, much more difficult to actually sell books. I mean, I think people are buying less books. And actually, I was talking to a friend of mine this week who's a quite well-known fiction author, and she said the same thing. It's not just business books. And also, obviously, far more people are buying them on digital, the digital version than the print version. That's really changed. It used to be the other way around.
Hmm.
So what I'm finding is I'm definitely not going to be retiring on my royalties. But what it is good for, and I would encourage anybody watching this who's writing a business book to go for those big name endorsements if you can. I mean, if you don't ask, the answer will always be no. That's how I figured it. I mean, when I asked Guy Kawasaki the first time around, I'd met him briefly, and we'd had a good interaction that I could remind him about. Hey, this is what we talked about, and I just got him on a good day, and he had a bit of time, and he looked at my, I was very, very lucky, but. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, you can't seriously ask Guy Kawasaki. Are you mad? But if you don't ask, it will definitely not happen. And what I'm
Right?
seeing my book as is a credibility piece that says, hey, I've written a properly published book, and here are the
Yeah.
people who endorsed it, who are very credible people in their own rights and known names and so on. And that gives me credibility. And I
Yeah.
think that's the main benefit of having this book.
Yeah.
And obviously, as
Yeah.
I'm going to prospects and trying to sell my services, I can say, would you like to see a copy and so on. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a great tool for credibility. The so I have to ask about the guy Kawasaki. So how did you just reached out to him? Like you just put it out
yeah,
there like, "Hey, will you do this?"
yeah.
It reminds me
No, it's
of
ridiculous, isn't it?
yeah, I had a guest on. Miriam Schulman is her name, the author of Artpreneur. And when I talked with her about how she published her book, she said, I didn't even know it was hard to get picked up traditionally. I just submitted my book to a publisher and they picked it. And I was like, well,
Right.
okay, most people don't have that path, but great. So
Well,
yeah,
okay. So I think I did have. Because I'd met him and we'd had a conversation and we actually exchanged. I think I gave him one of my at those days it was you'd made a video or something tape, and he gave me a book. I don't know. I had his actual email as opposed to the sort of generic email, so that obviously helped.
yeah, you had a connection there. So
And
yeah,
I
it wasn't
also
just out
know
of the
that
blue.
recently a friend of mine went to a traditional publisher and with a I think what was probably a pretty good manuscript, again, non-fiction, but they rejected her because she didn't have the platform. She didn't have like 10,000 social media followers. And those are other things that you
Right.
need these days. It's not just about the quality of your writing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but again, it's that credibility piece or that social proof there. It's like you have these connections, so they know your book's going to sell. So it
Right.
makes it more likely to get picked up too. But, um, well, Philippa, what's one piece of advice you have for somebody who is in the process of maybe thinking about writing a book or in the process of writing a book? What would you tell them? What's the biggest thing you learned that you want to let them know?
You know, what I did, I mean, having sort of dinged AI a bit, what I found really helpful, and it's, well, again, because my book is written in the first person and it's really me talking, rather than sitting in front of a blank screen and going, okay, I've got to type something coherent, I went and mixed myself a nice, well, not necessarily an alcoholic drink, but, made a nice cup of tea, went and sat on my deck in the sun, with my phone. And I was using Otter AI, but whatever program, and I just basically said, okay, what do I fancy talking about today? And I just started talking into my phone about whatever. I mean, I had an outline, obviously, but okay, let's talk about, I don't know, AI and analytics or whatever, and just talk into the phone while I'm just sitting in a nice easy chair relaxing, get the transcript off of the AI and then edit that. And I think that made it a whole lot easier than, as I say, just sort of staring at the blank screen and thinking I've got to be grammatically correct and coherent at this point.
I love that tip. That was a great tip because I think for a lot of people, the actual process of sitting down and writing is daunting. But for a lot of people, it's like if you have a question or if you have an outline, like you said, like you can you know your stuff, right? Like if
Right.
you can just talk through it and
Yeah.
get it on paper or in
Right.
a document or whatever, and then from there you can work with it, right? So
Yeah.
it's actually how I approach the process of ghostwriting with people is like just get them talking. Very similar, like it's just coming from me saying talk about this. I'll ask questions. They'll talk through it, and then we can take that and turn it into the content. So you're just
Right. Right.
basically walking yourself through a ghostwriting process. You're just ghostwriting for yourself.
And
So
you
yeah,
know, there
yeah,
were
that's a
times
great
when I
tip.
was doing it and I'd be talking, and one of my rules is if I'm bored, then the reader is for sure going to be bored, right? So I'm talking and talking, and then I say you can, and in the recording I can suddenly hear myself going, "Oh no, this is really boring. Stop, start again," right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great tip. Well, Philippa, we'll link to website wealth in the show notes. There was several other things you mentioned in this episode that we'll try to find links to some of the resources that you shared. How else can people find out or find you online and learn more about what you're doing?
So my favorite way to be contacted at the moment online is LinkedIn. I mean, I use LinkedIn a lot, as you know, because we just talked on LinkedIn.
Yep.
And my website is called websitesthatwin.com. So you can, we'll have a link to that as
Nice.
well. But LinkedIn is great.
Great.
Yeah. And I would,
Okay, perfect.
love
Well,
to
yeah,
hear
you
from
would.
people and connect with other authors.
Yeah, you and I are connected on there now. So, yeah, we will keep in touch that way. So, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your book with us. And
Yeah.
wish you the best of luck. You've got, yeah, just a couple months under your belt with this book, an audiobook coming out in a few months. Can't wait to hear about that.
Thank you so much.
Looking for a community of women writers to support and inspire you on your journey? Join the Author Power Circle. Connect weekly with fellow authors, stay accountable, and move your book forward in an encouraging community. Learn more at kellyshuckneck.com.